Why did no one ever notice her? That thought drifted across Freya Carter's mind as she stood in the medical bay of Forward Operating Base, meticulously arranging bandages and saline bags, as though the order of things might keep chaos away. The base hummed around her, generators rumbling, distant boots striking the frozen ground, encrypted voices crackling over radios. But she stayed in her quiet corner, unseen and unimportant to anyone except the wounded who eventually needed her hands. At 25, she looked smaller than the room deserved, 5'4" with pale eyes that lingered on details others overlooked. She was the medic, the soft-spoken one, too gentle for anything except saving lives. That's what they believed. It's what they needed her to be. And yet, under the fluorescent hum, as she pressed her thumb against a vial to check for cracks, Freya knew the others were wrong. She knew it because she carried a secret that not a single soldier had suspected. It started 3 years earlier, in the abandoned storage bunker 50 meters from the main compound. While others played cards, lifted weights, or wrote emails home, Freya slipped into the dust-coated concrete room and became someone else. The medic disappeared, and the hidden version of her, the one her brother had uncovered, took shape. He had been special forces once, a shadow in Norway's, and he saw it before anyone else. Her way of thinking 3 moves ahead, her uncanny ability to anticipate. "You move like a ghost," he'd told her, "and you see things no one else does." So he trained her, and she trained herself. Manuals smuggled in, hours of repetition, rope burns on her palms, bruises that she explained away as clumsiness. Every night the bunker became her private crucible, and every morning she went back to her role as the fragile medic, the one who flinched at gunfire. Her colleagues never suspected. They saw the small frame, the soft tone, the healer. None realized she could break down an enemy's body with the same anatomical knowledge that let her save a life. None understood that her greatest contradiction was also her greatest strength. But secrets don't stay hidden forever. At 6:30 hours, she closed her inventory clipboard and glanced through the bay's frosted window toward the surrounding mountains. Rugged, merciless, their white slopes and jagged stones seemed to breathe with secrets. Intelligence had whispered of increased hostile activity in those peaks, but the base carried on. Soldiers joked over breakfast. Helicopter crews ran pre-flight checks, and Freya lined up syringes in perfect rows. By afternoon, when the briefing began in the command center, she sat in the back row as always, notebook balanced neatly on her lap. No one noticed the way her eyes fixed on the tactical map more intently than any medic should. Major Harrison, the commander, pointed at Grid Square Echo 7, 15 kilometers northeast. Possible weapons cache or training facility. Cave complex. Bravo team inserts at 200. Standard reconnaissance and interdiction. Freya's pulse quickened. She knew those mountains. Not from intelligence packets, from nights studying geological surveys in her bunk, tracing every contour like someone learning a lover's face. She saw the problems immediately. The landing zones exposed, the ambush routes obvious, the caves more complex than anyone realized. But when she hesitated and raised her voice, suggesting alternate routes, Lieutenant Commander turned in his seat. The SEAL leader looked every inch the stereotype. 6'2", square-jawed, brimming with confidence that could bulldoze through doubt. "Thanks, Carter," he said evenly, his tone wrapped in courtesy that was really dismissal. "But we've got the tactics covered. You stick to medical prep." The room chuckled softly, not cruelly, just with the assurance that everything was in its proper box. Medics in one, operators in another. Freya lowered her gaze, pen tapping against paper. But inside, something tightened, a thread of frustration wound than it had ever been. That night in the mess hall, she overheard sergeants saying exactly what she already knew they thought of her. Competent at patching people up. But if boys need medical support, they're already in over their heads. Best keep her safe. Safe, that word dug in deeper than any insult. She thought of again. The military loves boxes, Freya. Once they put you in one, you'll have to break it before they see you. And when himself approached her table minutes later, asking about the cave system, the shift startled her. For the first time, someone wasn't dismissing her. He listened as she described ancient tunnels used in World War II, alternate entrances, hidden valleys. His demolitions man leaned in. His comms specialist scribbled notes. For 20 minutes, she wasn't the quiet medic, she was a tactician. Even asked her to consult informally for the mission. When they left, her heart beat with both exhilaration and dread. She had waited years for this, to prove her preparation mattered, but stepping forward meant stepping out of the shadows forever. Hours later in her quarters, maps spread across her bunk. Freya traced routes with a penlight, whispering her brother's words like prayer. Break the box. She didn't know that less than 12 hours later, her secret would burst open, not because she chose to reveal it, but because the screams of dying men would force her to. For now, though, she studied the stars over the black peaks outside her window. The night looked still, silent, but the mountains were only waiting. And tomorrow, so was she. Why did her hands feel colder than the steel she was gripping? Freya Carter stood at the edge of the operations center, her medical pack neatly prepared, but her mind was already far away, up in the Black Ridges where Bravo team was headed. It was 1:30 hours, and the room buzzed with tension disguised as routine. SEALs checked gear with clockwork efficiency, their movements precise, quiet, unshakable. Freya watched them with a strange ache in her chest. They looked like warriors out of legend, moving as if the mountains would bow to them. Yet she couldn't shake the unease prickling in her stomach. She knew the terrain better than they did. She knew the danger was what intelligence claimed, and she knew she was about to be ignored again. The operations officer pointed to screens filled with weather data. Clear skies, -15°C, winds minimal, conditions optimal for helicopter insertion. Optimal, the word grated. Freya saw the same terrain but not the same optimism. In her mind, she pictured fields of fire that overlapped, caves with concealed exits, routes that could trap even the strongest operators. When asked for final concerns, raised his hand. "Sir, Carter's been studying alternate routes. Might be worth hearing." Freya felt every eye in the room turn. This was her moment. She forced her voice steady. "Sir, I've identified 3 problems with your primary approach. The landing zone is overlooked by ridge positions. The route is the most obvious, perfect for ambush, and the caves themselves can conceal far greater numbers than satellite suggests." Silence spread, brow furrowed, the confidence in his jawline softening into something grimmer. "You're saying our intel is wrong." "I'm saying," Freya replied carefully, "that the terrain itself gives defenders the advantage, regardless of equipment or training. If they're waiting for you, the cost will be high." The room held its breath. Operators who had once dismissed her were suddenly listening. Alternate routes pressed. Freya adjusted the digital overlay, pointing to a valley to the east. "It's longer, 4 hours on foot, technical climbing required, but concealed, and the cave system has multiple entrances and potential escape routes you won't see from above." The operations officer squinted at her. "How do you know about multiple entrances? That wasn't in intel." Heat rose in her cheeks. She hesitated, then chose honesty wrapped in vagueness. "Geological surveys, historical reports. I've studied everything I could about this region." Studied her for a long moment. "Carter, you're thinking like an operator." She wanted to laugh or cry. For years she had been, just never out loud. But before she could answer, alarms blared. Satellite feeds lit up red with pulsing heat signatures. "Alert!" the duty officer shouted. "Movement in grid Echo 7. At least 20 hostiles, defensive positions forming around the cave." The room erupted. Voices called for updates, screens flashed with shifting data. Freya felt her heart slam in her chest. Her warnings weren't just theories anymore. They were unfolding live. Demanded a count. 30 contacts, came the reply seconds later. Equipped, organized, sir, this looks like a fortified defense. The mission had turned inside out, reconnaissance into possible slaughter. Stared at the display, lips pressed thin. Around him, officers murmured options: abort, wait, reinforce. But Freya knew the truth. The SEALs were already locked in. Helicopters were warming up. The window for insertion was minutes, not hours. She stepped forward. Sir, you can't insert on the primary route. It's suicide. The only chance is the Eastern Valley. His eyes cut to her. He didn't dismiss her this time. He studied her, measured her. And you'd lead us there, Carter. The question caught her breath. She hadn't realized until that moment how much she wanted it, how much she feared it. Yes, sir, she whispered. But before could answer, Major Harrison slammed the door shut with his voice. Absolutely not. Carter, you're a medic. You're not going into combat. That's final. Her throat burned. Harrison's dismissal was absolute, carrying the weight of command. Around her, the room shifted back into motion, pretending her offer had never existed. Hesitated, then turned away. We'll adapt, he said tightly, though his eyes lingered on her as if weighing the cost of her absence. Minutes later, Freya stood in the medical bay, listening to the dull whine of helicopters spinning up outside. Her equipment was perfect. Her syringes labeled, her bandages packed. She had done everything required. But it wasn't enough, not for this. Through the window, she saw his team moving toward the landing zone. Precise, silent, professional, yet she could see the stiffness in their shoulders, the tiny signs of doubt. They were marching into numbers far beyond what they'd planned. Broke off briefly, jogging to her door. Doc, he said, breath frosting in the cold air. Thanks for your intel. You've already saved us from walking blind. I wish I could do more, she murmured. You already have. We'll be careful. He gave a small, grim smile and ran back to his team. Her fists clenched around the doorframe. She wanted to scream. She wanted to tell him being careful wouldn't matter against an enemy twice their size. The radio on her desk crackled. Viper 1-1, passengers aboard, ready for departure. She watched the helicopter lift, its lights fading into the black mountains. A piece of her went with it. 40 minutes later, the first transmission came through. Voice, calm but tight. Base, this is Bravo leader. Overwatch position reached. Target area more active than expected. Defensive structures, organized movement. Freya leaned over the console, heart hammering. She could hear the tension beneath his words, like wire pulled taut. Bravo leader, base confirms 30+ contacts, came Harrison's reply. Abort if compromised. Silence, then's voice again. Negative, mission continues, evaluating alternatives. Alternatives, that word was for her. Freya pressed her hands to the desk. She couldn't sit here. Not when she'd mapped a path no one else understood. Not when lives balanced on knowledge only she carried. Her brother's voice echoed. Sometimes you have to break the box. She opened her personal locker. Inside lay the truth she had hidden for years. Climbing gear, ropes, anchors, hardware. A compact rifle she had modified piece by piece. And a medical kit that could save or end a life depending on how she used it. Every piece represented nights of preparation, years of secrecy. Every piece whispered the same thing, now. She clipped gear to her harness with trembling hands, slid the rifle strap across her shoulder. Her pulse slowed with every movement. Fear fell into rhythm, replaced by calm precision. Switching to a private encrypted channel, she whispered into her headset, Bravo leader, this is Carter. The reply was instant, startled. Carter, you're supposed to be on base standby. I am, but I've been analyzing your situation. The eastern approach is still open. I can reach you in 4 hours. Carter, we don't have climbing expertise. You do now. Static filled the silence, then's voice low and sharp. Clarify your position. Freya tightened her pack straps and moved toward the maintenance gate she'd memorized long ago, crossing the perimeter now. Harrison's voice cut in like thunder. "Carter, return immediately. That's a direct order." Her boots crunched on the frozen earth. The fence loomed ahead, wire glinting under pale lights. "Sir," she said softly, "I understand the consequences, but I can't stay here while they die out there." She pushed through the gap she had discovered months ago, disappearing into the night. Behind her, the base blared with orders, threats, chaos. Ahead lay 4 hours of brutal terrain, cliffs she had trained for, cold that would strip her bones bare. But somewhere in those mountains, men were screaming for help. And for the first time, Freya Carter wasn't just the medic waiting behind walls. She was the one moving toward the fight. How far would she get before doubt caught up with her? The question shadowed every step as Freya Carter moved into the mountains, the base lights shrinking behind her until they were nothing but a faint glow swallowed by the dark. Ahead, the Norwegian wilderness stretched endless, jagged ridges, black cliffs, snow fields that glistened under starlight. The kind of place where mistakes weren't forgiven, where one misstep could end a career, a life, maybe both. Her breath came steady, measured. She'd trained for this. She reminded herself with every controlled exhale that she wasn't improvising, not tonight. She was walking a path she had memorized piece by piece, like a hymn repeated in silence for years. Every contour of the Eastern Valley was etched in her mind. She had studied it when others played cards. She had dreamed of it while others slept. And now, finally, she was living inside the preparation. Her pack weighed heavy, but not too heavy. Inside lay contradictions, tourniquets and syringes beside climbing anchors and specialized ammunition. A medic's life-saving kit next to a rifle engineered for killing. Two halves of the same person she had always been, hidden, until tonight forced them into one. She climbed carefully, boots grinding into loose stone, testing each hold before shifting her weight. The air was thinner than at the base, and the cold gnawed into her fingertips, but she kept moving. She knew fatigue would come. She welcomed it. Better the burn in her muscles than the helplessness she'd felt watching that helicopter lift away. Through her headset, fragments of radio chatter broke the night. "Bravo leader, this is base. Confirm hostile numbers increased to 40+. Defensive positions entrenched. Do you require immediate extraction?" His voice came back, strained but steady. "Negative, extraction compromised, will hold, searching for alternate routes." Freya slowed, gripping an icy outcrop, her stomach twisted. They were already pinned, just as she'd warned, just as she'd feared. She pressed her cheek against the cold stone, whispering into her private channel. "Bravo leader, Carter here. Status." Didn't respond at first. Static hissed. Then low and urgent, "Carter, what the hell are you doing?" "Climbing, 2 hours out from Overwatch position." "You disobeyed a direct order." "Yes, sir." Her voice was steady, stripped of apology. "But your team needs support only I can give. You won't survive without it." Another long pause. She could almost hear him weighing trust against fury. Finally, his reply came, softer than she expected. "Then don't be late." The line cut. Freya exhaled, pressing her forehead against the rock. "Don't be late." The words burrowed inside her, heavier than the pack on her shoulders. She wasn't just climbing for herself now. She was climbing for 6 men who believed, maybe reluctantly, that she could change the battlefield. Her brother's voice echoed again. "You move like a ghost. You see what others miss." The climb steepened, forcing her to set anchors. Her hands moved with calm precision, clipping rope, testing holds. She'd practiced these motions 1,000 times, alone in forgotten bunkers on training cliffs. Tonight, every repetition mattered. Halfway up, she paused on a ledge to rest. She pulled the rifle from her back, unfolding the stock, checking the scope. The weapon felt alien and intimate all at once, a tool she had built in secret, piece by piece, like she was sculpting another version of herself. Tonight it wasn't theory anymore. Tonight, she would find out if her hands could steady themselves not just to heal wounds, but to create them. Her stomach turned. She knew what taking a shot meant. She'd studied anatomy, trauma, death, but as lessons, not as acts. Killing was a threshold no textbook could prepare her for. And yet, she reminded herself, the screams of dying men had already rung through her mind once. She hadn't forgotten that sound. She never would. She secured the rifle again and pushed upward. Hours blurred into motion, hands scraping against rock, rope biting her waist, the night air cutting deeper as she climbed higher. The valley below faded into black, the stars overhead. Somewhere beyond sight, Bravo Team was fighting for survival, waiting for help that might never arrive. Her headset crackled again. This time's voice was sharper. Base, Bravo Team taking fire from multiple positions. Cannot maneuver. Ammunition low. Extraction impossible without suppression. Freya froze on the ridge, fingers gripping stone until her knuckles whitened. She could hear gunfire faint in the background of the transmission. Bursts of automatic weapons, the distinct thud of grenades. Real. Immediate. Her heart hammered. She wasn't there yet. She wasn't in position. Every instinct screamed to move faster, but rushing would kill her. One wrong step on this ridge and she'd fall before she ever had the chance to save them. She forced herself into rhythm again. Grip, test, pull, grip, test, pull. Minutes later, or hours, time had no meaning here. She crested the ridge. The world opened beneath her. The valley stretched wide, carved into the mountain like a scar. Muzzle flashes flickered against the cliffs where the caves hid their secrets. Echoes of gunfire cracked through the night. And pinned behind boulders, team huddled in desperate cover, returned fire too thin, too scattered. She slid into prone position among jagged rocks, heart slamming as she brought the rifle to her shoulder. Through the scope, the battlefield sharpened. She saw the machine gun nests anchoring the defense, saw the arcs of suppressive fire pinning Bravo Team. She saw the enemy, organized, trained, moving with precision. Not ragtag fighters, soldiers. Her throat tightened. The moment she'd feared was here. No more theory, no more preparation. Her finger brushed the trigger. And for one breathless instant, she was Freya the medic or Freya the hidden fighter. She was both. She was all of it. His voice cut through her earpiece, raw with urgency. Any station, we need overwatch now. We won't hold much longer. Freya steadied her breath. The world narrowed to a scope, a heartbeat, a choice. Then she whispered, "Bravo leader, on my signal, move." Her pulse slowed, her vision sharpened. The gentle healer was about to pull the trigger. What does a life weigh when the decision rests on your fingertip? Freya Carter's cheek pressed against cold stone as she steadied her rifle. The valley below pulsed with fire and chaos, Bravo Team pinned, enemy muzzle flashes cutting the dark like lightning. Every second stretched into eternity. Every breath was a choice. Through the scope, she locked onto the first machine gunner, his weapon spraying arcs that pinned men to the rocks. His face was half hidden by the barrel, the glow of tracer rounds lighting the hard set of his jaw. She exhaled slowly, her finger squeezed. The shot cracked across the valley. For an instant, nothing. Then the machine gun went silent, the enemy slumping out of sight. Freya froze, her body locked in the aftermath. She had studied trauma her whole career, but never from this side of the rifle. She knew exactly which artery she'd severed, how quickly life had drained away. The knowledge pressed against her chest like a stone. But before the weight could crush her, his voice cut through her earpiece, sharp and alive. "That's one nest down, move, move." His team shifted, seizing the moment. For the first time, the tide bent. Freya blinked hard, refocusing through the scope. The second nest revealed itself, two gunners alternating fire, their rhythm designed to crush anyone daring to break cover. She steadied again, ignoring the tremor in her hands. Her brother's voice whispered from memory, "You move like a ghost. You see what others miss." The first gunner exposed himself to reload. She took the shot. Down. His partner lunged to cover the weapon, another shot, cleaner than the first, dropping him instantly. Two nests gone, the valley shifted again. Below shouted orders. Advance left, Carter, keep them off us. Keep them off us. She had gone from invisible medic to the voice they counted on. The irony was brutal, almost laughable. She pushed it aside. There was no time for reflection. She tracked the third position higher, dug into stone. A figure moved behind sandbags, firing measured bursts. This shot required precision at an angle she'd practiced in theory but never in combat. She adjusted windage, steadied, and let the breath go. The round found its mark. The gunner folded. And with that, silence spread across the ridge for the first time in an hour. The machine guns that had owned the valley were gone. But the silence didn't last. Movement stirred from the cave mouth. Dozens more than she'd counted spilling out, organized, disciplined. Not panicked. They were adapting. Her stomach turned cold. These aren't insurgents. These are soldiers. She whispered into her mic, "Bravo leader, more contacts emerging. At least 20. They're regrouping." "Copy," replied, breathless but fierce. "We're shifting position. Keep eyes on." Freya adjusted her scope, picking targets. She didn't have the ammunition for 20. She didn't have the time. Her hands worked without hesitation now, body falling into rhythm, identify, steady, fire. Each shot clinical, each target chosen with anatomical precision. A leg to drop a runner, a shoulder to shatter a rifle grip, a head when nothing else would do. With every shot, something inside her fractured and hardened all at once. The medic still lived in her. She knew exactly the pain she was causing, the finality of every impact, but another self was rising, one she had only glimpsed in secret training sessions. The two halves fused, becoming whole. Teams surged forward, maneuvering under her cover. They were shouting now, voices edged with adrenaline but also renewed hope. She was buying them time. She was giving them room to breathe. But hope was fragile. Her earpiece crackled. "Carter, hostile flanking right, we can't see them." She swung the scope, moved through a ravine out of line of sight, preparing to cut them off. Her pulse spiked. Too many for her alone. She whispered into the channel, "On it, hold position." One shot. A leader dropped. Another stumbled in confusion. She shifted, fired, shifted again. Chaos rippled through the group as precision dismantled coordination. The ravine attack dissolved before it began. His voice came back, ragged but firm. "Carter, I don't know how you're doing this, but keep doing it." Her throat tightened. Not long ago, he dismissed her at a briefing table. Now, in the chaos of battle, his survival hinged on her unseen hands. But she knew her advantage wouldn't last. Ammunition was finite. The enemy's numbers were. As if to prove the thought, a new flash seared the night heavier, deeper. Mortar fire. The ground shook, stones raining down as explosions ripped across the valley. Freya's body pressed flat against rock, instinct screaming. But she lifted her head, scanning. The mortars were coming from deeper in the cave system, coordinated, deliberate. Her voice cut into the channel. "They've got support weapons. This isn't local militia. You're facing trained military." "Tell me something I don't know," barked back, but the edge in his tone carried agreement. The mountain thundered with another round. His team scattered, scrambling for cover. Freya's mind raced. Machine guns she could handle, but mortars, they'd rip the valley apart. Her position was safe for now, but Bravo team had no chance unless the barrage was silenced. She checked her rifle. Not enough, she'd need to move. Her pulse pounded. The safe choice was to stay put, keep providing overwatch until ammunition ran dry. No one would fault her for it. But the medic in her, the one who had sworn never to let men bleed out while she had the power to act, couldn't stay still. She whispered into the channel, "Bravo leader, I'm shifting to neutralize mortars." reply was instant, furious. Negative, stay in Overwatch. But she was already moving, slipping from her nest, climbing toward a shadowed ridge that curved toward the cave. Every step closer to the enemy was a step deeper into the box she'd spent years avoiding. She thought of words, of dismissals, of Harrison's orders. All of it meant nothing now. What mattered was the team pinned below, the shouts in her earpiece, the lives balanced on her silent advance. She moved like she'd trained, low, deliberate, a ghost among rocks. The roar of mortars masked her movement, explosions shaking the earth as she crept closer. Her heart beat steady now, every motion deliberate. And for the first time, she realized something terrifying. She wasn't afraid anymore. She was exactly where she was meant to be. What happens when the healer walks straight into the fire? Freya Carter pressed her body against the ridge, stone biting into her ribs, the night alive with thunder. Mortars boomed from the cave mouth below, each blast a hammer blow shaking the valley floor. Bravo team was pinned, their comms ragged with strain, their ammunition dwindling fast. And here she was climbing toward the very heart of the storm. Her boots found purchase on jagged stone, hands gripping ice-coated holds she could barely feel through the gloves. Her rifle stayed slung tight across her back, weight shifting with every movement. Each climb brought her closer to the source of the mortars, closer to the enemy, closer to a threshold she knew she could never uncross. Her breath came steady. Years of training, secret, hidden, unpaid, unrecognized, were carrying her now. Every anchor she drove into stone felt like proof that those nights alone in the bunker hadn't been wasted. Every pull upward was a rejection of the box the military had tried to lock her in. Halfway across the ridge, her comms hissed alive. Bravo leader to base's voice, gritted teeth behind steady tone. We're sustaining heavy fire, requesting immediate extraction window. Harrison's reply sharp with command. Negative, LZ compromised, no safe approach, hold position. Hold position. Freya clenched her jaw, they couldn't hold, not against mortars, not against 40 trained fighters. Her throat burned as she whispered into her private channel. Bravo leader, this is Carter. I'm within striking distance of the mortar position. 2 minutes. Static, then furious. Carter, I told you to stay put. That's a direct. She cut him off, her voice harder than she expected. Sir, if those mortars keep firing, you're dead in 10. I can silence them, trust me. Silence stretched, then's reply low and grim, do it, and don't miss. The line went dead. Freya's chest tightened. She had wanted their respect for years. Now she had it, but in the most unforgiving way possible. This wasn't a briefing table. This wasn't a chance to show insight. This was life or death. Their survival sat squarely on her shoulders. She pulled herself up the final ledge, crawling into a shallow depression of stone. From here, she had a clear view of the cave entrance. The mortar team worked with brutal precision, 4 men, coordinated, professional. They moved in rhythm, firing, adjusting, reloading. These weren't amateurs. They were soldiers drilled in their craft. She eased her rifle into position, scope settling on the nearest. His face was lit by the glow of the firing tube, sweat glistening on his brow despite the cold. He barked orders in a language she didn't recognize, his movements efficient, practiced. Her finger touched the trigger, she hesitated. Killing with distance, she had managed that already. But here, watching them so closely, seeing the lines of strain on their faces, it was harder. They weren't faceless threats anymore. They were men doing their job, same as team, same as her. Her stomach twisted. You're supposed to save lives, not take them. Then another mortar thumped, the ground shaking. Her headset erupted with voice ragged. Carter, we can't hold much longer. Her hesitation vanished. She exhaled, squeezed. The first man dropped instantly. The second spun in shock, another shot clean. She shifted, fired again. The third collapsed before he could touch the tube. The fourth scrambled, reaching for a weapon. Freya fired, striking his chest. He staggered, fell. The mortar went silent. Her rifle lowered. Her hands trembled. 4 lives ended in less than 20 seconds. For men she might have saved had they been on her table instead of this mountain. Her breath hitched. She pressed her forehead against the cold stock, whispering to herself, don't think, keep moving." But the thoughts came anyway. She could picture their anatomy, arteries severed, lungs collapsing, hearts torn apart. She knew precisely what damage she had inflicted. It made the act both easier and infinitely harder. Her headset crackled, his voice this time almost reverent. "Mortars are down, Carter, you just saved us." The words hit harder than any explosion. Saved us, not patched us up, not waited in the rear, saved. She swallowed hard. There was no pride in it, only a hollow ache, but she forced herself to focus. The fight wasn't over. Through her scope, she saw new movement in the caves. More fighters pouring out, scanning the ridges. Her position was compromised. They'd noticed the silence of their mortar crew. She ducked low, heart pounding. Her brain fired with rapid calculations. Distance to cover, wind direction, number of hostiles. She wasn't panicking. She was processing like in the medical bay, diagnosing under pressure. Only now the patients were enemies. She switched channels. Bravo leader, hostiles advancing from cave, 30 plus, they're spreading out. Responded immediately, his voice steady despite the chaos. "Copy, can you delay them?" Her stomach clenched. Delay them, not stop. Delay because there were too many and she was one. She checked her magazine. Half left, not enough. Her options spiraled in her mind. She could keep firing, thinning their numbers, but eventually she'd be overrun. Or she could move closer, try to create chaos inside the cave itself. Risk everything. Her brother's voice returned, like always in the hardest moments. "Sometimes you have to break the box before they'll see you." Freya exhaled, sliding a fresh magazine into place. She whispered into the mic, "I'm going in." His reply came sharp, instinctive. "Negative, that's suicide." She answered with words that surprised even her. "So is staying out here." And before he could reply, she was moving, low, fast, slipping across the ridge toward the cave mouth. Every step was a test of nerve. Shadows loomed, gunfire cracked across the valley. Shouts echoed, enemy voices hunting her position. She moved like a ghost, using rock and snow for cover, every ounce of training tightening into instinct. The cave grew larger with each breath, black mouth in the cliff swallowing light. Inside waited more than she could handle. She knew it. She didn't care. Because Bravo team was still pinned, and she was the only one left who could tip the balance. Her boots found stone at the cave's edge. She pressed flat, rifle ready, heart thundering but steady. Then she whispered into her mic, voice calm, final. "Bravo leader, on my mark, push forward." And without another thought, she slipped into the darkness. What happens when the enemy is close enough to hear your breath? The darkness swallowed Freya Carter the moment she stepped inside the cave. The air shifted, colder, damp, carrying the bitter tang of old stone and gunpowder. Behind her the battlefield roared. Gunfire, shouted orders, explosions echoing through the valley. But here, inside the mountain, the world narrowed to silence and shadows. Her boots crunched softly against gravel. Every sound felt as if the cave itself were listening. She slowed her breathing, steadying her rifle, forcing her heart to beat quieter, calmer. She had trained for distance. She had prepared for precision. But close-quarters combat was something else entirely. Here, mistakes weren't measured in meters. They were measured in heartbeats. Voices drifted toward her, sharp syllables in a language she didn't speak. Light flickered deeper in the cave, bouncing off wet stone. She lowered herself to one knee, scope adjusting, eyes straining to read the shadows. 4 men, weapons ready, moving toward the mouth where she had slipped in, searching. Her muscles coiled tight. She could retreat, slide back into the night, vanish into safety. That was still an option. But Bravo team's voices crackled in her headset, raw and desperate. "We're hit. multiple wounded, ammo running dry. She clenched her jaw. Safety was a luxury she'd never been meant to choose. She exhaled, aimed, fired. The first man dropped before he saw her. The second whirled, shouting, weapon rising too slow. A second shot silenced him. The remaining two dove for cover, bullets sparking against stone. Freya rolled behind a jagged pillar, heart pounding, ears ringing. Dust filled the air. The cave lit with staccato flashes. Her breath steadied. She peeked around, calculated angles, fired twice. Silence followed, broken only by the dripping of water. Her hands shook. She pressed them flat against the rock, whispering to herself, "Keep moving. Don't think, keep moving." She stepped deeper, rifle raised. The cave tunneled down into black corridors that twisted like veins. Every bend could hide a fighter. Every shadow could hold death. She moved with careful precision, each step deliberate, each corner cleared with the calm focus she once used for triage. The skills weren't so different: diagnose, anticipate, act fast enough to save a life. Only here, the lives were measured differently. Her comms hissed alive again. Voice ragged, "Carter status, we're holding but barely, 2 men down." Her chest clenched. She wanted to be there to stop their bleeding, to press bandages against wounds. But she forced herself to answer with steel. "Hold on, I'm inside. I'll buy you time." "Inside? Damn it, Carter." Static cut him off as gunfire drowned the channel. She kept moving. Deeper in, the tunnel widened into a crude staging chamber. Crates stacked against walls, ammunition belts sprawled across the floor. And men, at least 6, preparing weapons, barking orders, gearing for a counterattack. Her stomach dropped. This was the hub. If they poured out, Bravo team wouldn't last 10 minutes. She crouched low behind a crate, fingers brushing the cold steel of a grenade clipped to her vest. She had taken it more out of preparation than expectation. Now it felt like the only answer. Her thumb slid the pin. She hesitated, the weight of the act pressing down. A grenade wasn't surgical. It didn't distinguish between threat and possibility. It was absolute. Her brother's voice whispered in memory. Sometimes hesitation is more dangerous than action. She exhaled, counted 3 heartbeats, then rolled the grenade across the stone. The blast thundered through the chamber, deafening, brutal. Screams followed, then silence broken by smoke and ringing echoes. She rose, rifle ready, moving through the haze. The chamber was chaos: shattered crates, fallen bodies, the acrid sting of explosives. A man still alive reached for his weapon. She shot him clean, quick. Another crawled toward cover. She ended it before he turned. Her body moved with grim efficiency, but her mind screamed in protest. Every face she saw could have been one she'd treated. Every wound she caused mirrored one she had once healed. She was unraveling and hardening at the same time. Then she saw something that made her freeze. A map table, spread with satellite photos, coded notes, communication logs, not random malicious scrawlings, professional planning, organized, detailed. Whoever they weren't a loose band of fighters. This was military. She snapped photos with her comms tablet, heart racing. Proof, but no time to study it. Footsteps echoed behind her. She spun just as a fighter lunged from the tunnel, knife flashing. He slammed into her, knocking the rifle wide. Pain flared across her ribs as they hit the stone. The blade pressed close, glinting in the dim light. Freya gasped, twisting, muscles straining. She had trained for this, drills burned into memory. Use their momentum, redirect. Don't fight strength with strength. She shifted her hips, rolled, the blade skimming past her arm. With clinical precision, she jammed her thumb into the nerve cluster at his wrist. The knife dropped. She snatched it mid-fall and drove the hilt into his temple. He collapsed, unconscious. Her chest heaved, sweat mingled with dust. She stared down at the man, alive but broken, and for the first time in hours, relief surged. She hadn't killed him. She hadn't crossed the line entirely. But then she heard boots pounding deeper in the tunnels, more coming. Her reprieve evaporated. She grabbed her rifle, sprinted through the chamber, deeper into the mountain. She wasn't just surviving anymore. She was running toward the source because if she didn't end it here, Bravo team wouldn't make it out. Her headset crackled one last time. Voice strained, hoarse. "Carter, we can't hold much longer. If you've got something, now's the time." She whispered back, voice steady despite the fire in her chest. "I'm not done yet." And with that, she vanished deeper into the black heart of the cave, where the line between medic and killer would blur beyond recognition. What do you become when retreat is no longer an option? Freya Carter's boots echoed softly in the tunnel, each step pulling her farther from the night sky, deeper into a labyrinth of stone and shadows. The air thickened, heavy with dust and the metallic tang of blood. Behind her lay bodies and echoes of gunfire. Ahead, the faint glow of lanterns flickered against walls, and the murmur of organized voices grew louder. Her chest rose and fell in steady rhythm, though her pulse hammered beneath it. She had already gone further than anyone expected, further than she had ever allowed herself to imagine. The medic who once waited on the edge of battles was now threading herself through the heart of one, carrying the weight of a team's survival on her shoulders. She crouched at a bend, listening. Men were speaking in low, clipped tones, their movements efficient, confident. She risked a glance around the corner. A command post. At least a dozen fighters clustered around another table of maps and radios. Ammunition crates stacked high, weapons propped against stone walls. And in the center, a man who radiated authority, taller, broader, his uniform cleaner, his posture sharper. This wasn't a militia leader. This was an officer. Freya's throat tightened. Her suspicions were right. This wasn't a ragtag group. This was organized, structured, military. She ducked back, pressing against the wall. She could turn around, slip back through the tunnels, return to her overwatch, pray Bravo team could hold until dawn. That choice would save her life. But's voice echoed in her headset, strained and broken. "We've got more wounded. Too critical. We can't hold much longer." Her decision was made for her. She slid a fresh magazine into her rifle. She checked the grenade she had left. Her hands trembled not from fear, but from the knowledge that she was about to become something she couldn't undo. She whispered to herself, "For them," then she moved. She rolled the grenade across the floor, low and quiet, watching it disappear under the table. The blast shook the chamber, shattering lanterns, throwing bodies into chaos. She surged through the smoke, rifle snapping to targets before her mind could process their faces. One down, two down, three. The officer shouted orders, rallying survivors, but confusion reigned. She moved like instinct, like training she had carved into herself in secrecy. Not a medic now, not only. Something else. Something forged by necessity and rage and the screams of men who had begged for help she refused to ignore. But even chaos has limits. The officer rose through the haze, firing controlled bursts that forced her behind a crate. His voice barked in command, rallying fighters. They weren't breaking. They were regrouping. Her breath came sharp. Ammunition was running thin. She couldn't win a drawn-out fight. She reached into her pack, pulling a small bundle of climbing charges she had carried almost as an afterthought. Her plan was sudden, desperate. Blow the cache. Deny them the weapons. Cripple the heart of their position. She set the charges fast, fingers working with the precision of a surgeon. Every second felt stolen. Gunfire chipped stone around her, sparks dancing. She armed the last charge, slammed the detonator into her vest, and rolled back into cover. Gunfire paused, boots scraped. The officer barked a word, a command she didn't need translated. Advance. Her headset came alive again. Voice hoarse, faint. Carter's status were falling apart. Her hand clenched the detonator. Her voice whispered into the mic, calm as stone. Hold, just hold. She pressed the trigger. The chamber erupted. The explosion ripped through the crates, ammunition cooking off in deafening bursts. Fire rolled across the stone walls, swallowing fighters, tearing their command into ruin. The shockwave slammed her against the wall, heat scorching her face. For a moment, there was nothing but fire and ringing silence. Then gunfire again. Not all were dead. Shadows staggered through smoke, coughing, bleeding, still fighting. And the officer, burned but alive, raised his weapon with furious precision. Freya rolled, rifle barking. The officer fired back, bullets sparking off stone inches from her head. The cave roared with echoes of their duel, two figures locked in survival's final argument. Her magazine clicked empty. She dove behind cover, yanking her pistol free. The officer advanced, relentless, his silhouette hulking in the firelight. Her chest heaved. This was it. No distance now. No safety in scope or shadows, just her and him. He rounded the corner, weapon raised. She fired first. The shot struck his shoulder, spinning him. He dropped the rifle, staggered forward with a knife drawn, rage burning in his eyes. Freya's heart pounded. She braced, remembering's voice, remembering drills in the silence of the bunker. Don't meet strength with strength. Redirect. Break balance. The knife slashed, grazing her arm. Pain flared white-hot. She twisted, grabbed his wrist, and drove her knee into his gut. He grunted, staggered. She wrenched the knife free and in one clean motion drove it into his chest. His eyes widened, breath caught, and then he collapsed, the fight leaving him in a heavy, final exhale. Freya froze, staring down at him. Her chest heaved, her arm throbbed with pain, blood warm under her sleeve. She should have felt triumph, relief, something. But all she felt was the hollow weight of one more life ended. Smoke curled around her. Fires crackled, dying. The chamber was destroyed, the weapons ruined, the command severed. Her headset hissed, again faint, desperate. Carter, is it over? She swallowed hard. It's over for now. Her knees nearly buckled. She pressed her back to the stone, sliding down until she was sitting among the wreckage. Her hands trembled as she reloaded, more out of reflex than need. Her body was alive. Her spirit felt shattered. She whispered to herself, words breaking in the smoke. You're a medic. You're supposed to save them. But the truth stared back at her in the silence of the dead. Tonight, she had saved them, just not the way she ever wanted. She forced herself to stand, forced herself to walk back toward the tunnel, toward the faint glow of night at the cave's mouth, toward the men still waiting for her outside. Her arm bled freely. Her breath was ragged. Her soul carried more weight than her pack ever had. But she kept walking because Bravo Team still lived, and for that she would carry the cost. Why did the silence feel heavier than the gunfire had? Freya Carter staggered through the tunnels, her rifle hanging loose in one hand, the other pressed against her bleeding arm. Smoke clung to her skin, dust in her lungs, ears still ringing from the explosion that had ended the command post. She could feel the weight of every step, not from injury, but from everything she had done to make it this far. The faint glow of night drew closer with each breath. When she finally stepped back into the open air, the cold bit into her face, sharp and real, almost a relief after the suffocating dark. The valley stretched before her, a battlefield, littered with shadows of what had been. Fires flickered in the distance where grenades and mortars had torn earth apart. Echoes of battle still rang, but quieter now. Her headset crackled. Carter's voice ragged, strained. You still alive? She raised the mic to her lips, her voice rough but steady. Alive, mortars gone, commands destroyed. A pause, then relief flooding through his tone. You just saved us all. Her throat tightened. She didn't answer. She forced her legs down the slope, weaving between rocks and debris, rifle ready even though her body screamed for rest. She spotted them at last, Bravo Team, huddled behind shattered boulders, faces pale in the dim light. Two men lay wounded, one unconscious, blood pooling beneath him. Rose when he saw her, disbelief etched across his dirt-streaked face. Carter, You actually, he stopped, words failing. For a moment, the commander, who always seemed unshakable, just looked at her like he didn't know what to say. She knelt beside the first wounded man before he could continue. Her hands moved on instinct, gloves slick with blood. Pressure here, tourniquet there. She murmured instructions, calm and precise, falling back into the rhythm that had defined her life. Not killer, not ghost, medic. The soldier gasped as she stabilized him. His eyes fluttered open, meeting hers, confusion shifting into gratitude. He whispered, "Doc, thought you weren't here." "I am now," she whispered back. The second man was worse. Shrapnel across the chest, breath shallow, skin clammy. She leaned close, pressing gauze, sealing wounds as fast as she could. Her heart pounded with urgency, not from enemy fire this time, but from the fragile thread of life slipping beneath her hands. Her voice cracked as she urged him, "Stay with me. You're not done yet, you hear me? You're not done." Crouched beside her, watching with eyes that carried something new, not just respect but awe, he didn't speak. He didn't need to. When she finally stabilized the second man, exhaustion hit like a tidal wave. Her arms trembled, sweat freezing against her skin. She sat back on her heels, breath coming hard. For a moment none of them spoke. The team just stared at her, the medic who had become their sniper, their shield, their unseen savior in the night. Finally broke the silence, his voice hoarse. "Doc, you're not just a medic, are you?" Freya looked at him, words tangled in her throat. She wanted to deny it, to retreat back into the safety of titles and roles. But after tonight, denial felt hollow. She said quietly, "I was never just one thing." The men absorbed it in silence. No judgment, just understanding. Straightened, his voice firm again, though softer than she had ever heard it. "We need extraction now. We can't hold this valley." Static filled the comms. Base answered at last, Harrison, voice clipped, almost panicked. "Bravo team, status. We lost contact with you, we thought." "Cut him off. We're alive. 2 wounded, multiple hostiles neutralized. We need a bird now." A pause, then Harrison's voice returned, sharper. "How the hell are you alive?" His eyes flicked to Freya, then back to his men. His reply came steady, deliberate. "Because Carter didn't stay in the rear." Silence answered. Freya looked away, throat tightening. She didn't want applause. She didn't want headlines. She only wanted the men in front of her to make it home. Minutes stretched like hours before the sound came, rotor blades thundering through the cold night. A helicopter cut across the horizon, lights sweeping the valley. Relief rippled through the team. As the bird descended, snow and dust whipping in its wake, Freya felt something break loose in her chest. They had survived, not because of luck, not because of perfect plans, but because she had stepped into the role she had been told she could never have. The wounded were loaded first, medics rushing to take over. Freya helped lift stretchers, her body aching, every movement a reminder of cuts, bruises, blood drying on her uniform. When the last man was aboard, turned to her. For a moment he just stood there, searching for words. Then, with a quiet gravity, he raised his hand and saluted. The gesture hit harder than any explosion. Freya froze, her chest tight. A salute wasn't casual. It wasn't flippant. It was respect, carved in silence. She had never worn the insignia for it, never earned it in the traditional way. And yet, here it was, a commander saluting a medic who had become more than anyone thought she could. Her throat burned. She didn't return the salute. She just nodded, eyes shining with something between sorrow and pride. As they lifted into the sky, the valley shrinking below, she sat in the hum of the helicopter, surrounded by battered men who had lived because she had broken her own boundaries. She stared at her bloodied hands, the duality written in every line. These were the hands that had killed tonight, and these were the same hands that had kept life clinging where it wanted to let go. For the rest of her life, she would carry both truths. The helicopter thumped across the mountains, dawn beginning to burn faintly on the horizon. She leaned her head back against the cold wall, closing her eyes, the roar of blades washing over her. Her mind replayed everything: the first shot, the caves, the officer's last breath, faces she had ended, faces she had saved, the two halves of herself colliding into one. She whispered words no one else heard, words only for herself. "I'm still a medic, even if I had to be something else tonight." The bird carried them back toward base, where questions would wait and reports and consequences. She knew Harrison would rage. She knew the system would never quite know what to do with her. But she also knew one truth, carved into her bones by fire and blood. When the SEALs screamed for help, she hadn't looked away. She had acted. And sometimes dignity doesn't speak. It simply acts.